Hi everyone, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here to talk to you today about Valentine's Day. Yes, love is in the air, and as it is in the air, this is the perfect time to start watching Valentine's Day episodes, which is something I like to do around this month. And one of the DVDs, or shows I should say, I like to watch during Valentine's month is Sliders. And there are a couple of episodes, not a lot, but a couple of episodes sliders that have to do with romance. Now, some of these episodes are primarily about like two people falling in love or one-sided love. So it won't really be like, say, somebody has a crush on one person and they probably go on one date in the episode and that's about it. It won't be like that. It won't be like that episode where Quinn and Wade are married and Quinn is working for her business and they discovered that Wade killed Quinn. Cause that really doesn't have nothing to do really about love. Same thing with the whole dating thing. Like when Quinn went to that 1980 type world and he met his younger self and he dated his teacher. That it won't really be like that. It has to be like really, really lovey-dovey, like romantic type love or somebody getting married. And also love episodes don't always have to be about necessary love. It could be about love and pain. So, so here we go. Season 5 episodes will not be on this list only because I really don't remember too much about Season 5 and I hate Season 5. The first one on this list is an episode I particularly do not like. It's one of my least favorite episodes of Season 4 and it's Road Taken. The reason why it's not really one of my favorite episodes is because one is very confusing. Two, it has to do all that like sci-fi magic type crap of like Quinn and Maggie creating a bubble world just by thinking it. And three, the whole Quinn and Maggie thing, I'm still not like on board with. Like in a little way, I kind of am, and I'm kind of not. It's just I can't stop thinking about her husband and how he was alive and how she kept like messing around with other guys. And then like in that snake episode, she was crushing on the bad guy that episode, and it's kind of like, your husband was literally shot a couple of weeks or months ago. How can you be over him just that fast? And what's the point in wanting revenge on Rickman if you're flirting with like another guy? So that just I hate how they wrote her character back then. Road Taken starts off with the vortex opening up, and it opens up very weirdly because it's malfunctioning. Only Rembrandt and Colin comes out of the vortex, and they say it was a bumpy ride. Next thing you know, there's no Quinn and there's no Maggie. So they're really worried because Quinn has the timer and Rembrandt doesn't know what kind of world they're on and he's scared and he doesn't want to stay there. Next thing you know, Maggie and Quinn come out the vortex and they said they had a perfectly normal slide, where the other two said it was terrible. So they start walking in the streets and next thing you know, you start hearing bombs go off and gunfire because on that world, they're at war. So they try to make it to the Chandler Hotel. And when they get there, Quinn and Maggie are starting to feel kind of like different. They're starting to feel kind of sick, mainly Maggie. She's a little under the weather. So as they go to the room, they're there and Rembrandt is trying to figure out, what's going on in this world. So he talks to a reporter and, he's working his magic and everything, being like this little sneaky spy type person. And he's doing a really good job, man. You gotta give it up. Like after all this time of sliding, like, they know how to like talk to the locals and stuff, him and Quinn. So upstairs, Colin, there's really no form of entertainment. Like TVs are down, internet's down. There's radio, but you have to like turn the little lever to make it work. So he's doing that, trying to figure out also what's going on in this world, why Quinn and Maggie are like laying down. After a while, Colin starts to see this ghostly figure of a man. He's doing something with his hands, like he's trying to like work some kind of electronic device, and he's phasing in and out of reality. This freaks Colin out to where he tells, the others, oh, I saw this ghost man, and then the others are kind of like, oh no, not another ghost world and stuff. So as time goes by, Rembrandt is out in the street, and as soon as he goes out in the street, he is like getting shot at by like the people they're at war with, and so the reason why he left the hotel is because he's trying to find like a doctor. So as he's talking to the military guys who's trying to protect him, the military dude didn't want to help him at all. Cause he's like, look, man, I'm trying to shoot the bad guys. I ain't got time for this and stuff like that. But then the officer gets shot himself. So then he's all like, look, if you help get me back to the hotel and get some help, I'll help get you some medical help for your friends. By this time, Maggie and Quinn's like condition is getting worse. They're starting to turn yellow and their hair is starting to turn gray. So by that time, the doctor shows up and he's not really sure what's going on. But then when he keeps looking into their eyes, Quinn's eyes completely like gray. He said it looks like an advanced form of cataracts. So like the doctor deduces that Quinn and Maggie are dying of rapid old age. So he calls in for like them to be quarantined and stuff like that. And he tells them this could take weeks up to months. And of course the sliders ain't got that time because they got to slide on out of there. So Rembrandt is deciding on what they do. Do they stay there with Quinn and Maggie, or do they slide out of there and then later come back? Because they have that ability now with the timer. Next thing you know, the ghostly figure comes back, and now he's in physical form. And he reveals himself to be Quinn and Maggie's son. I forget his name. And then he explains, he's not like a double, he's not a Cro-Man, he's like legit. And he explains to them what happened. He explains that when Quinn and Maggie was sliding, somehow their minds created some kind of like bubble universe. And so like, it's kind of weird. This is the part that's so confusing. It's like, okay, there's now two versions of our Quinn and our Maggie that's been kind of like split. The physical body forms are the ones that are on that world where they're at war with Rembrandt and Colin. And then there's kind of like this mental projected image of Maggie and Quinn on the bubble world. And on that bubble world is where they living out their lives. They know nothing about sliding. They don't know who Wade, the professor, is. All this other stuff, because they never lived lives that they did in their other worlds. And what gets more confusing is that, okay, we see these two at their high school prom, which they should have just got teenagers because they don't look like teenagers. But anyway, we see their lives like, progress. They start off as high school sweethearts. They start dating. They later are in a car where they're like making out, and they start talking about their future and how, they want to go to college and they want to start like a family and get married. And and one of them's kind of like having reserves about it, like, I really want more of a career, and the other one's kind of like, but I really want like a family. So then next thing they get married, they have a kid, he grows up, and then we get to see like, their son like grow up into like a college student, and we get to see an old version of like Quinn and Maggie. It's the regular actors, they're just in makeup. And then next thing and then it goes back to their son, the older man, explaining it to Colin and Rembrandt. And pretty much it's like a whole monologue and flashbacks. And the actor who plays it's a really good actor. He has a very somber, very like quiet type voice, a gentle soul type voice. But what's more confusing is that he tells Colin straight up, you're my uncle. Yet Quinn doesn't have a brother on that bubble world. And he also tells Rembrandt, I've heard so much about you from stories that Quinn and Maggie told me about how you're really good friends. Now this is confusing because in the bubble world, there is no sliding technology. They've never been to parallel worlds. They don't know who the professor, Colin, Wade, or Rembrandt are because they never met them in them other lives. So it's kind of like, how do they know who those people are if they never experienced and never met these people? So it's kind of like that doesn't make no sense. And then it doesn't make any further sense when later they slide to that bubble world. And then their son has to introduce who Colin and Rembrandt are, because they literally, the older versions of Quinn, now it's played by older people, they literally don't know who these people are. So it's kind of like, well, they have to know who they are because they explained it to their son when he went to the other, the real universe. So it just doesn't make no sense. So then they now have to fuse both the Quins and both the Maggies together, because the bubble universe is collapsing on itself and their mental states have to go back into their bodies. And it makes no sense. It's not really, it's explained in like sci-fi weirdness, and it is not a very good written episode. And you know, it ends on them saying like a poem, and they try to make this episode seem more philosophical, more romantic, more emotional, but it's not really hitting those points because this episode is beyond confusing. And then it makes it even more confusing when all of them slide, well, except for the son, 'cause now he's sacrificing his life so that his parents can live their life. And so it's kind of like, then they slide back to that world that's at war. But they slide back at the exact moment they slid onto that world in the beginning. So they haven't met that military officer dude yet. He hasn't got shot yet. Rembrandt hasn't talked to the reporter yet. And it's kind of like, well, I don't understand, because time travel is not really supposed to be in this show. Like, you know, they have established that they don't believe that it exists and that it doesn't exist, but now yet time travel happened. And then not only that, but Quinn and Maggie's all like, they have all of their memories from that bubble world once they fuse with the older selves. And it's just a weird episode. But I put this episode on this list because we do get to briefly see Quinn and Maggie fall in love, get married, have a kid, but it's very, very, very rushed. And it's just one of those episodes that just was not written very well. And that's why it's one of my least favorite episodes. The next one on my list is one of those iffy episodes from season 3 called Dragon Slide. It's one of those stupid third season episodes that deal with like a monster or some kind of movie element or something like that. But there is some love going on in this episode. That's why it's making this list. It starts off with a woman being chased in the woods by a man. I think her name is Miranda or something like that. And she's being chased by the dude who plays Rom from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So that's really cool. So yeah, he's in this episode. He's chasing her. And then I think he uses some kind of like talisman to like put her to sleep. Oh yeah, this episode deals with sorcery and magic. Quinn comes through the vortex and he's doing his Superman thing. He's like, "Hey man, what are you doing?" And he starts like chasing the guy. He's chasing the guy, and the guy turns himself into a bird and flies off. And the other sliders see that. And so Quinn, you know, he picks up Miranda. Is it Miranda? Miranda? It's Miranda, I think. And he picks her up, and they're like on a horse, and they're like, he's carrying her back. And I don't know where they found the horse, but they found the horse. And so she's on the horse, and he's on the horse, and he's holding her, and he's just gazing at her, stroking her head, and he's just like, Pisano is like, it's almost like he's falling in love with her, and he doesn't understand why. And so at that time, Wade's kind of telling the professor, "All right, professor, you're a science guy. How do you explain a guy turning himself into a bird and flying off?" And professor is just like, he has no idea. Like, you can tell this is one of those episodes where John was pissed off about. Two police officers show up, and when did you know, it's Charlie O'Connell. And it's one of those episodes where I stated in my other episode is like, the dude's been in this show since like season 2, but he was never called Colin. Anyway, so yeah, so in this episode, he's like a sheriff's deputy. He's a jerk, and he has his female partner, and his female partner is really concerned about this woman, and he's kind of like, "Look, this woman is this dude's apprentice, and this dude's like a really bad dude, and you don't want to be on his good side. And when he takes over the world, you're gonna want to be on his good side." So he takes her from the sliders, and returns him back to this guy who's like a druid. So this episode pretty much plays off just like a typical regular like episode. They go to like the hotel, they find out what's going on in this world. Diggs tell them that all about like how they used to be wizards and there are druids, and this guy named Gareth, he helped destroy all him and the other druids helped destroy like the wizards, and some of the druids are good, but some of them are really bad like Gareth. And druid people, they actually existed. They were conquered by the Romans, and the Romans, they was either conquered by the English or the Germans. I can't really remember which one. Anyway, so Quinn is constantly thinking about this woman. He's worried about her. And then we get to the lovey-dovey part of this episode. Rembrandt sees a woman that he knows from his Earth, and he's just like, he's surprised that he sees her. He's falling madly in love with her the moment he sees her, and he wants to be with her on this Earth. But this woman has no idea who Rembrandt is. She's like a psychiatrist who thinks Rembrandt is just like crazy in the head. And he's just trying to explain to her, like, I know you, but I really don't know you. If you just let me explain. And she's kind of like, nah, you just need to get away from me, and stuff like that. But if you are that crazy in the head, we can talk, but you have to pay me. Because she's a psychiatrist. So then Rembrandt is explaining to Wade, who this woman is. This woman's name is Alicia, and apparently we get a little backstory into him. He explains to her before his Cadillac went into the vortex, he was gonna ask this woman to marry him, named Alicia. She was part of this other band, but then of course we all know what happened in the pilot. He went into the vortex. He never got back home, and so he missed his opportunity with this woman. And he's always been so heartbroken because he was madly in love with this woman. And Wade's kind of like, oh, that's so sweet, because she never really bothered to ask him what his life was like before he started sliding. And he tells her straight up, yeah, he used to have a life, and now it's gone and stuff. And that was a really touching moment, because in this episode we get some more character development, some more backstory. There's also a little bit of character development between him and the professor when they start arguing more. It was that season where they started to really build on the tension of sliding so long and just being around each other. Also, this episode has a lovey-dovey element because we get more hints of Rembrandt having feelings for Wade. We saw these hints earlier in this season, like in the dream episode, where it's kind of, it is tiny little hints. And there was also tiny little hints in that Christmas episode. Every time he looks at Wade, every time he talks to her, how he's always being affectionate towards her and stuff, and how he's always argumentative to the other guys. So Wade decides to do like a spell that she found, because Wade's all into like sorcery and witchcraft and all this astral plane projection type stuff. And so she does a spell. And in the spell, it says something, I forget the exact like phrase, but something about the first person you see will be your heart's desire and stuff like that. And of course, the first person he sees is like Wade. So he's falling head over heels for Wade, and she is getting irritated. It's so funny. Like, we see her like just getting furious at him for like falling in love, because she thinks it's all pretend. She doesn't think it's real. And he's constantly professing his love for her. He's stealing flowers and giving it to her. He's singing for her. And so that's that part of the episode, where mainly all the love stuff is happening. So then next thing you know, Wade finds the psychiatrist lady, Alicia, and she's trying to get her to break the spell on Rembrandt. And she tells Wade that, these feelings that he's having for you, they might be actually real, and it's this way, like, because Alicia, she doesn't believe in magic at all, which is weird because they live in a world where there is magic, but she's like, but I guess wizards kind of keep that thing hidden. So she's telling Wade that she doesn't believe in spells, but she believes this is like his real feelings for her, and he's just projecting it out in a way and using the spell as an excuse. So Wade kind of gets like, that's interesting. So then she hypnotizes Rembrandt. And then she asks him, plain and simple, do you love Wade? And he confesses that he does love her. Like, he thinks about her, and, it's hard for him not to want to think about her because she's so sweet and compassionate and stuff like that. But then she asks him, like, do you want to make love to her? And he's all like, it's not like that. It's just, he's in love with her soul and her mind more than like a physical type thing. And then we start to see Wade kind of like be like, not necessarily like falling back for him, but kind of like surprised and kind of like, well, if it's not going to work out for Quinn, maybe it could be something between him and her. But it's never explored after that, which is something I forgot to add in my plot hole thing. Which is, this unexplained like love connection between Wade and Rembrandt that went completely nowhere after this episode. So then she breaks him out of hypnosis, and he doesn't remember saying anything. He doesn't remember how he acted. And Wade's kind of like, just another run-of-the-mill day type thing, and nothing really happened. So she doesn't want to tell him, what all he confessed to her and stuff. Because I guess deep down inside, she doesn't want to have a relationship with him, which, I don't know, it could be just because she doesn't know him very well. It could be like an age thing, or it could be, since she can't have Quinn, she kind of just really doesn't want to have anybody and something like that, The rest of this episode focuses on Quinn, whatever the woman's name is, and then the professor. Pretty much it's like, Gareth he thinks Quinn is a sorcerer, or a wizard, I should say, because his little stooge saw Quinn come out the vortex. So because of that, Gareth's all kind of like, oh, the last, wizard, and, it's a Mallory, and, I have to kill him and then possess his body. Because his whole thing is this. He wants to be immortal. And the thing is, if you have a family line, and if you was to destroy every member of that family, something bad and magical will happen. So because of that, he keeps a Mallory frozen all in time. And so, that's why he wants Miranda, whatever her name is, he wants to give her a baby because she has magical powers. And if he gives her a baby, then the baby will have magical powers. And then he'll put his soul in that baby. And then not only will he be even more powerful than what he is now, he will also be immortal. So that's that weird part of that whole story. So she tricks Quinn. Gareth puts his soul in Quinn's body. The professor finds out. He talks down to that woman and tells her, you have to do the right thing and stuff like that. And so when Gareth declares himself to all the Mother Druid people, the professor stabs him with a knife because in order to get the spirit out, you have to kill the host. So he kills Quinn, and then that woman said, she can revive him with her magic, but she's unable to. So he tells her, you have to look deep down inside yourself and use all your magic abilities to get Quinn, restore Quinn's life. And she's all like, she can't do that because she's using a lot of her powers to keep this illusion of beauty on her face because she was burnt as a child and she doesn't want people to see her face burnt. And Professor, he persuades her to do it. So she uses all her magic to resurrect Quinn. And after that, her face is like, you see the scars on her face from the fire. After that, they meet up with Rembrandt and Wade, and they tell her that, that lady's coming with them because her life is in danger here. Next thing you know, she gets, taken away. Also, there's a dragon in this thing. I think the dragon takes her away, or somebody takes her away. I forget who it is. And so they go to the cave where she's at, and they rescue her. And they rescued the other Mallory guy. Quinn is the one doing all the rescuing because, a Mallory can only wield this special sword. And and it has the name Mallory on it. So he defeats the dragon, and it's one of the worst CGIs I ever seen. It looks so rubbery. It's terrible. Anyway, he defeats the dragon. Somehow he defeats the Gareth guy. I think Gareth turns into like a cockroach or something like that. And then it's just one of those dumb episodes. I kind of don't really want to go into much detail in because I hate this episode so much, which is weird because I love sorcery and wizardry and stuff like that. But I do not like this episode on Sliders. So in a way, the Sliders slide out of there. They leave that woman there with the other Mallory guy, and the other Mallory guy, he stomps on the cockroach, which is Gareth. So now he's dead. And it's a dumb episode, but I only include it because of the love element between Wade and Rembrandt. The next episode is an episode I love because of how silly it is, and it reminds me so much of season 1 when they had more humor in the show. But there's not that much of a love element to it. It's just only because, you know, the element of getting married is there. So it's Lipschitz Live. And I know I'm probably saying that wrong. Anyway, on this world, it starts off with the Sliders getting separated. Quinn is separated from Colin. Colin is separated from the rest of the group. And Maggie and Rembrandt, they slide on top of a skyscraper type thing. And so they're dangling like hundreds and hundreds of feet in the air. They're screaming. They're worried. And so it's the cutest little funniest banter between Rembrandt and Maggie, where like they're just hollering, and she tells him it's time for you to be a man and press this button and try to get us to safety. It's off the wall silliness. And there's an episode directed by Jerry O'Connell, which he was a producer, so he was trying to bring Sliders back to its good old days after the 3rd season put a sour taste in everybody's mouth. And when I mean they're up high, I mean they are up high. Now there is a CGI scene of a background where they're dangling the 2 actors, and then after that you see the stunt doubles hanging actually from the skyscraper thing, scaffolding thing, I think that's what it's called, of the skyscraper building. And they are up so high, and then next thing you know, when the little scaffolding thing goes up, we see the 2 actors actually climb onto like the roof, and it's just so high up, and you can tell they were probably scared in real life, so that probably helped sell it. So as Quinn is separated, he goes into the hotel. The hotel dudes are like really rude to him, and he goes to the bar, and then he found out that he can start charging whatever he wants at the bar to the company that owns it. So he starts getting like a lobster, some drink, stuff like that. And everybody in this world watches the this Lipschitz Live show, which is kind of like Jerry Springer. And it's the only thing that's really on 24/7. There are other shows, but nobody watches that. They only watch this dude because it's very scandalous. You remember how Jerry Springer was back in the day, back when the 90s, when it was really good, you know? So I understand why that's the only thing they watching. So Colin's by himself, and he's just wandering around. And as Maggie and Rembrandt have now made their way to the hotel, the clerk dude is still being rude to them, and then Colin sees them. So he's been approach them when he's grabbed from behind by these security looking guys, and then he's thrown into a limo. Now in my plot hole video, I made a little bit of a mistake when I said there was 3 different actors to play Malcolm Mallory. Actually, there are 2 different actors who play Malcolm Mallory, Quinn's father, but there's a 3rd actor, and he plays MacArthur Mallory, and he is Colin's stepdad in this episode. It's kind of interesting because he's Colin's stepfather, so MacArthur has the Mallory name, and Colin, mother, who they don't show in this episode, she has a completely different last name. So that's kind of interesting that Colin isn't a true Mallory, but yet he's you know, a Mallory nonetheless. Which brings me back to that point of, you know, when he was supposed to be Quinn's clone and not actual brother. So these two are in the limo and they're talking, and MacArthur is very upset at Colin. He thinks he's back to drinking, being an idiot, not doing what's responsible, and that he doesn't want to get married. And MacArthur wants him to get married to this woman named Roxanne, because in this world it's all about the big merge. It's all about these big studio TV companies and wanting to like buy out other studio companies and merge together, so they force their kids to like get married. It's kind of like back in the old days when a king and queen would have like their princess or prince marry like another princess or prince from like another country, because they want to also rule that land and merge their two together and combine their resources and army and stuff. So it's kind of like that. And TV mergers happen all the time. I mean, the CW used to be UPN and the WB, and they merged together to become the CW, and then they brought both their shows over. And the CW is owned by CBS. It's similar to like other big things, like when Disney bought out Fox, or when Saban sold his Power Rangers to Disney, and then later bought the rights back and then sold them to Hasbro. And it's just these big mergers always happen. And the reason why MacArthur is on Colin's case is because the Colin of this world, who was actually in the hotel reading the newspaper when our Colin got kidnapped, is that this Colin, he's just a sponge. Like, he's a spoiled brat. He's rich. He smokes. He drinks a lot. He doesn't have any respect for women. He just uses them. And it's just, he's all around like just like a sleazy type guy. So the actual Colin of this world, like I said, he was in the hotel. And so when Maggie and Rembrandt was looking for Quinn and Colin, they discovered that there's a Colin battery staying at the hotel. So they go to his room and they start to be kind of suspicious. They're kind of like, where did Colin get all these clothes, all this jewelry, all this money? And then the other Colin comes in and he pretends to be their Colin. So next thing you know, oh no, wait, no, he doesn't. At first, he doesn't pretend to be him. At first, he's kind of like, yo, people, like, don't touch me, don't look at me, don't talk to me. And he storms out the hotel, where then he later get hit by a car and he has to go to the hospital. When he wakes up, then it's when he tries to pretend to be their Colin, because he realizes that, there's a guy that looks just like him, and that guy can take his place and marry this lady named Roxanne. Meanwhile, Quinn is at the studio where they film Lipschitz Live, because he realizes that if everybody in the whole world and in that city watches this man's show, and there's a TV in nearly every room and on every street corner, that his group is bound to like find out where he's at, and so they can make the slide. So while he's there, he's dealing with this extremely hilarious, goofy, nerdy guy. And this guy is just getting on Quinn's nerves left and right. And the guy's name is Arnold Potts. And what I didn't know is that this dude is John Cashier. And this guy is John Castor. And this dude is like a legendary voice actor. He was the voice of the Crypt Keeper. He was Plato and Team Knight Rider. He was Buster Bunny and Tiny Toons Adventures. Like, I had no idea who this dude was. I just assumed he was just this goofy guy with like a curly afro. And so they're going back and forth talking about what's real, what's not, what's real sci-fi, what's real dimensional travel. And Quinn is trying to tell him, like, look, man, what I do is completely real, and what you do is completely made up in your head. And so this dude's just like dressed like a futuristic like space person. He has these weird goggles on, the goggles from that one episode, a VR episode. And he's just really getting on Quinn's last nerve, even to the point where they get into like a slap fight with each other, and he manhandles Quinn, which is kind of funny. Like in this season, Quinn does not have his one punch. Like he's no longer that like superhero-y type guy, and now he's getting his like butt handed to him all the time in this season. And both like Arnold and Lipschitz, like this is such a meta episode. Like they're bringing up like, well, Quinn's bringing up past lives that he's been on. He said like he met Elvis, which I don't remember him ever meeting Elvis. I remember in the pilot he went to that world where Elvis is still alive, and he saw that on the billboard, but he never actually met the dude. He's talked about how like he's faced like monsters, zombies, and stuff like that, and then how he met the female version of himself, and that takes everybody by surprise because everybody constantly asks him the same question: "Did y'all do it?" And Quinn's kind of like, well, because they had kind of like a kissing moment, like a Luke and Leia type thing, where they kissed each other, and Quentin didn't know at that time that that was like him, but the female him. And one cool thing is like when I said it's a meta episode, is like, um, what is it? I hate saying his name. Lipschitz. That's a tongue twister for you. Like he brings up like what happens when you all go to this world and y'all start like staying in like hotels and using up people's money and getting jobs, and you're taking like money and jobs from like real working like people of that world because you're like an alien. And that's something I've always like wondered because like in the earlier seasons, well actually in season one, they will wear the same outfit they did in one world into the next world, and then they'll later change up, and they'll either get clothes from like somebody like just offering them clothes, or they'll have money because they'll get money from like a lottery, or say that one time they'll have a couple of jobs and stuff like that. But they always have money and new outfits like since like season two, and it's one of those things you start picking up on. And it's like you never really see them work, and it's only been a handful of times you actually see them get a job in a couple of episodes. But it's like they're constantly having money now. They're wearing like extremely nice clothes, and it's kind of like it would be nice to see at least one of them like per episode, like actually working at a place. I left that out of my plot hole video only because like I knew where to get the money and clothes from. It's just always so funny how they always do it. And yeah, and then the dude like they do take jobs from like people who really need them on that world, and it's just one of those like really meta things. I'm so glad they brought that up. So while all this is going on, our Colin is hanging out with Roxanne, and he's trying to explain to her, like he's not her Colin, and like he needs to get to his friends, and he needs to leave out of there. And she doesn't believe him because she thinks he's drinking again, because this dude like drinks like a lot. Well, her Colin does, and so she forces him, and MacArthur and her father forces Colin to marry her, and it's like one of the most hilarious things ever. And like it's such a callback to season one, the comedy where Jerry directed this episode. It's like when they're getting married, instead of walking like under an altar type thing, they're walking under like a bunch of lawyers holding up briefcases. That's like the little archway. And like the dad is like kind of like the pastor dude who gets them married, and he's all like, one family, one corporation, like all this other stuff instead of talking about love. Because this MacArthur Mallory, he is like one of my all-time fave. He's like, screw love, it's all about money, it's all about the business, it's all about family and stuff. So like one of the most off the wall type things. And so like after you get married, you have to consummate your marriage, and there has to be like lawyers in the room as you're doing that. And Colin's kind of like, I've never done it before. I don't want to do it in front of people. It's supposed to be like something special. And she's all like, it's just like business and stuff like that. So those two start to like bond a little bit more. But first, like, he's like, oh, I have to use the restroom. And so like he climbs out the window and like it's on like the ledge, and then he jumps in one room, and that room just happens to be the one with MacArthur and Roxanne father's in. So back with Maggie, Rembrandt, and the other Colin, like, after seeing that they got married, they realize, oh, hey, this dude's not our Colin, and they want to know where's the real one at. And he's all like, I don't know, I don't care, but I'm a free man. Like, I love that line that he said, because it's all about like Italian mobster type world, but they all speak with these fake like Italian type accents. And like this Colin is like really heavily smokes, and I think Charlie might smoke in real life because the way he did it in this episode, he's like a pro. It's coming out his nose, coming out his mouth. And so, like, they convince him that, you might think you're free and everything, but you're going to be penniless because this our Colin is going to take all your money. So he's all like, oh, crap. So, like, he has to, like, get to, like, the hotel where they at. And he's constantly, like, smacking Maggie on the butt. And she, like, the first time when they're in the hospital, when he makes like some kind of like a scene gesture to her, like she smacks him a little bit on the face, but then when he grabs her butt, whoo, Kari turned her around really fast and just smacked the crap out of him. And it was a real slap, not like one of those fake TV slaps. It was like real. You could see his face jiggle. That's how hard she hit him. And then he just smiled like, oh, she's a feisty broad. So after the lawyers throw our Colin back in the room with Roxanne, she can see that he's hurt, and she's yelling at the lawyer, no, the security guard dudes. And so he finally is able now to convince her that he's a different Colin, and because she realized that this dude is like really, really, really sweet. So she realizes that, since they see Quinn on the TV, that they head to the studio. Well, then Maggie and Rembrandt and the other Collins show up, and they realize that, hey, they're gone, but they see the TV on, so then they head to the studio. So they all make it to the studio. They get on by saying, like, this is like Colin's twin brother who was raised by dolphins, and so they get on, and Quinn and the one dude still going at it, and then Quinn literally is about to leave them all there, but he has to wait to get back, so the timer now has that ability. But then they all meet up, they all hug it out, and then Quinn proves that what he's been saying is real by creating a tunnel right in front of the dude's face, and everybody's like in shock and awe, and then they slide out of there, and then the lipshits dude is all like, you've seen it here, folks, and aliens from like another world, and what happened if they come back? What if Colin wants the other Colin's wife, and blah blah blah, and then the episode ends. It's just like a really hilarious episode. I mean, there's not that much lovey-dovey stuff, but the fact that Colin did actually get married, and and he was able to cause this woman to kind of like bond with him because she wanted our Colin to stay with her because she realized this dude is like so sweet and he actually cares about how she feels, and she doesn't get that with the other dude. But with the other Colin, he literally realizes that he's gonna try to treat her better and all this other stuff, and he's not gonna cheat no more in drinking. But who knows if he really will or not. But like I said, it was just like a really hilarious episode. The next episode also comes from the 4th season, and that's Slide by Wire. And, this is actually a really funny story when it comes to Slide by Wire because, like, okay, when I was growing up as a kid, like, my dad left when I was really young, and then my mom decided, okay, we're going to get rid of cable because it's something we really don't need, and that's save money, stuff like that. So, from, like, probably 4 years old until I was 17 or 18, like I just didn't have cable. But back in the 90s and 80s, it was totally okay not to have cable because your needs were met because you had all these great local channels. You had syndicated stuff. Kids, they back in the day they had like Fox Kids, PBS, that one Saturday morning on Disney, and whatever the world CBS was. I really didn't watch cartoons on CBS. They had like the most lame crap, and then they had like other shows that came over that was like really popular that they later butchered, like Ghost Rider and the Ninja Turtles one. But Yeah, and then like I said, like you really just didn't need cable that much. I mean, it was cool to have it, but your needs were met because you had so much great television back in the day, and syndicated stuff it wasn't always great, but it was just so much more interesting. And they had more freedom than what they do now, and so when Sliders was canceled by Fox and went out to Sci-Fi, I was unable to see the fourth and fifth season. I actually didn't watch the fourth and fifth season until I became an adult in college, or maybe after college. Yeah, I think it was after I was in college, and I decided to buy it on DVD. Because back in the day, before Amazon had Amazon Prime, they used to have like these 2-minute clips of an episode. And I think you could rent them for like a certain amount of money, but I didn't want to rent the entire episode. I just watched the clips, and I realized that after watching those clips for like 2 minutes of every episode, I'm like, okay, yeah, the fourth season doesn't seem that bad. A lot of stuff has changed. I don't know who this tall guy who looks like Jerry is, and I don't know where Wade is, and Maggie changed her hair, and Rembrandt shaved his mustache off. But things seem pretty interesting, so I bought it on DVD. But before I ever bought it on DVD, years ago when I was a kid, we used to go to my uncle's house out of town for like the summer. And I think we was only there for like a week this time, but normally we used to spend like the entire summer there. And I remember he had cable and he had like multiple TVs. I'm like, this is great. I can now watch like the fourth season of Sliders, at least one episode for this one week. And so that episode was Slide by Wire. But Sliders came on Fridays. And back in the 90s, if you grew up in the 90s, then you would know that Fridays on ABC was TGIF, which stood for Thank God It's Friday. And they used to have nothing but sitcoms on Fridays. They don't do it no more, sadly. But yeah, I'm just like, crap. Like, I want to watch Sliders and record it, but I also want to watch, Steve Urkel. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll just record Sliders and then I'll just watch TGIF. And so, and I was pretty good at like electronics and setting VCRs and timers and stuff like that, but I was a little bit unfamiliar with my uncle's VCR, and I set it wrong. I was only able to record 12 minutes of Slide by Wire, and when I realized that, I was furious. I was furious because by the time my family did get cable again, Sliders was already canceled. I think it was like 2000 and 2001 when I got cable, and so they were just showing repeats and reruns on the Sci-Fi channel. So, and then when they were showing the reruns, they mainly only show like season 1 and 2, a little bit of 3, and then that first episode of season 5, and that's when I'm like, holy crap, Sliders went off the deep end now when they got rid of like Quinn. So yeah, so like the first 12 minutes I remember I saw of Slide by Wire, and I remember just being so confused. I'm like, oh, Maggie changed her hair, and it's like, well, what's going on in here? And then the intro came in, and I'm just like, whoa, Wade's gone. And I'm like, O'Connell. I'm like, oh, that's Jerry's last name. Oh, that must be his brother. No wonder they look alike. And then Rembrandt shaved his mustache off, and then I remember it ended, I believe, when Maggie found out Steve was alive on that world, and I was just like, no. Like, I want to watch the rest. And I remember Meg Foster was in that episode, and I remember her as Hera from the Hercules Legendary Journey show. So yeah, that's my little inside story of like how like I almost watched the episode but didn't. Not every love story is lovey-dovey. Some of them are like sadness and pain, and this episode is very sad and heartbreaking because Maggie is on a world where Steven is alive and he hates her guts. So it starts off with Maggie in like this military type facility, and she's like breaking into rooms, she's beating up other soldiers, she's cutting like their wrist and taking out this huge computer chip type thing that's supposed to unlock doors, but for some reason that one doesn't. And then she goes into a lab, and there's like this guy on the table with this computer chip thing in the back of his neck. It's like a input output type thing. Something you can jack into. And so she takes it off his neck, and then she places a duplicate one on his neck, and then she leaves. And as she's fighting guards, the sliders are sliding off that world, and they literally open, like Rembrandt opens the vortex, and she's not even like there yet. So I was thinking in my head, oh, okay, she must still be crabby, and they don't like her no more. They're just gonna leave her, and since they can like go back and get her, they, something like that. So, and it's actually really interesting that Rembrandt is holding a timer. He's only done that like 3 times and opened the vortex. So, Quinn's telling her, you're cutting it too close and it's time to slide. So they slide. And then we see another Maggie run out, and she's like, no. And then, but she's wearing like another military outfit. And I'm like, oh no. Because I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, oh no. So it's like our Maggie is trapped on that world, and the other Maggie is with the sliders. So with the sliders on the other world, that Maggie is finally free, and she wants to do everything she can. She wants to dance, she wants to ride horses, she just wants to leave her old life behind. And this world is kind of set back in like those old, like King Arthur type days. But they have technology, but technology is forbidden. It's considered heresy of like El Diablo. So when they find out you have tech, they pretty much throw you in this radiation room where you like burn a cinder. So, and the sliders, they have like one of the most advanced techs in the universe, so they have to hide that. So as they're there, that Maggie is like, she's dancing, she's having a good time. She's in love with Quinn, and she's trying to convince Quinn that, they're the leaders. They should just leave Rembrandt and Colin and just go off and have as much fun as they want. And Quinn, as smart as he is, he just thinks she's talking crazy talk. But he doesn't realize that she could be like a double, because she's acting completely weird and different. And Rembrandt, he's realizing that she's acting kind of bizarre too. So he suspects that something's really up with her. So he decides to follow her. And when he follows her, he sees that she takes like a computer chip thing out her head and replaces it with another one. So he knows for a fact she is a double. So he's all like, where's his Maggie at? They'll help you, but you're going back to your world, and we're getting ours back. And so she knocks him out, and she rats him out to the local authorities, and that he has technology to timer on him. So he gets taken away for the lovey-dovey pain and sorrow part of the story. So our Maggie's on the other world, and she's at the military facility, and she's being like interrogated by the lady Meg Foster, who you might know as the lady from Katniss and Lacey. She played Katniss, I believe. I don't know. I never watched that show. That's before my time. I wasn't even born then. But I remember her as Hera from Hercules. And she was also in that spinoff of the Pretty Little Liars show. Anyway, so she's Colonel Burke, and she's like interrogating Maggie. She's extremely cold. Like, Rickman was evil, but this woman, I don't know. I think she's worse than Rickman, because when she does all her evil stuff, she does it with a straight face and a little bit of a smirk to really like rub it in. As Rickman, he was just like off the wall, like villainous and stuff. Like, your Saturday morning curly mustache type dude. So this world is similar to that of Maggie's world, where Russia and America are at war, and Steven is trying to create sliding technology. So in this world, when Maggie does see Steven, she's actually in the room looking for sliding technology, because that's why they was in that facility to begin with, because they were trying to get to Colin and Quinn's like Chromac Prime world. So she meets Steven, and she's just so in shock. Like, she just can't believe that he's alive, because she hasn't seen him in nearly like a year's time. And the last time, she saw him. He was in a wheelchair, and he was shot by Rickman. Now her husband's played by a completely different actor, and he looks completely different too. I'm not sure why they recast him. Maybe the other actor was busy, or maybe they wanted somebody to bring more of like an emotional gravitas to the role. Because I remember the first dude, like he did a good job of what like he was written for, but he doesn't seem to have like that really like stern demeanor that this new Steven has. So, these two are going back and forth. She's telling him that, she's so happy to see him and she just wants to hold him, and he doesn't want anything to do with her. Like, he looks at her as she's a freak because in this world, they're test pilots, or they're fighter pilots, I should say. Um, they created jets that was like so advanced that no mere human could operate them. So they had to install technology inside a person's brain and then jack them up into their jet so they can fly it better. And so only a certain amount of people do this, and like 100% human people do not like them. They don't like being around them. They just think of them as cybernetic freaks. And that's what he looks at, like, because that world's Maggie wanted to be the best that she could be. And in order to be the best you could be, you have to, like, get assimilated. So their marriage fell apart and crumbled because she wanted to be the best soldier and pilot she could be, and he just wanted a wife. And so he didn't want a woman that has like this cybernetic technology in her. But even though he doesn't love her no more, he still has his wedding ring on, and our Maggie points that out. And so these two are just constantly going like back and forth of her trying to like embrace him and his resentment towards her, and she trying to like turn him to like a different leaf to show that he shouldn't like hate well, she's pretending to be the other Maggie. He doesn't know she's a duplicate. Like, you shouldn't like hate her for like what she did, and that their marriage means more to her than she'll ever like that he'll ever know. And it's just like a really touching and just like a heartbreaking type moment because cause he's really like the one real guy she's ever truly been in love with. Like, she's been like infatuated with like other guys and cheated on him, which was really messed up in the past. But like, he's always been like the one. She's always went back to him, even when our Maggie cheated on her, um, Steven. Like, even after the accident and he was paralyzed, she stuck with him, and that's like dedication right there. Because most people will probably just end up leaving you, and it was wrong for her to always cheat on him, but she always constantly just went back to him because she really loved this guy. So it really tore her apart, not only to see that he's alive, but well, a different version of him is alive, but he doesn't want like absolutely nothing to do with her. And even after her fighter pilot partner dies, he's acting so cold towards that guy because that guy also has technology in him. And Maggie's letting him know, despite having like technology in their brain, they're still human. They're no different than like you or I. Like, we all bleed like the same, and we all talk. We might talk in different tongues, but we're still human. So he slowly is starting to like come around, but it's taking him a good while to come around. So back on No Tech World, Colin informs the other sliders that Rembrandt's been captured and that he's gonna face El Diablo in that little radiation pit or radiation room. And so Maggie is, starting to like, they're starting to realize this might not be that Maggie because of the stuff she's saying. She's all like, oh, forget Rembrandt. Let's leave him. He wanted to stay on this world and all this other stuff. But then I think she passes out. And then when they check on her, she's bleeding from that implant that's in her neck. And so they realize that, that's not their Maggie. And she's all like, I could be if you want me to be. And then she explains her story about how like she's considered a freak back on her world and she has no freedom and all this other stuff. But when she left that world, see, the thing is, the implant that's on her neck, there's a computer chip. They constantly have to be like hooked up to their system. If they're not, they'll die within a couple of months. She took a new implant that they was creating that's supposed to allow them to like operate separately from the network. But for some reason, this doesn't work. A lot of that technology don't work on that other world. So, and Quinn's upset. He's all, you know, you knew you was gonna die, but you came anyway. And she's all like, you know, I just wanted like just like a few like weeks or months of freedom. That's all she wanted. And Quinn's like, you look, we will help you, but you gotta help us get Rembrandt back, and you're gonna help us get our Maggie back. So they free Rembrandt with and Jerry gives one of the bizarrest like performances of ever. Like he hasn't done this much comedy since like the first season. And so they save Rembrandt and they slide back to the other world, which she's very hesitant to go back to because she thinks they're just gonna leave her there. Which technically they do, but there's a reason for that. So something happens where our Maggie now has to get upgraded, and the Colonel Burke lady who hates Maggie Beckett like to death, she's the one who wants her to go and do this procedure. And so when Maggie's on like the medical bed talking to Steven, she tells him like, you know, don't do this. This is wrong. You know, this is really gonna hurt me more than you know, because she's not their Maggie, and she reveals that she's from another dimension. And then he reveals to her that, you know, the reason why he created sliding technology is because he hates what the military does to these soldiers, turning them into like cyborgs. And so he was trying to find another world where things won't be like that. And so Colonel Burke comes in and she's all like, you know, she was wondering what happened to Maggie's implants after they did a scan on her, because there's none whatsoever in her. And so she's convincing like Steven Jensen that, you know, Maggie's just lying to you and she's, you know, a Russian spy, and like, and she had her implants removed and all this other stuff. So she wants Maggie to go to like the next phase of the program. Maggie finds that out, what that is. Basically what it is they cut the heads off the soldiers. They put them in like a tank. They do all kind of weird experiments on them to where they can hook up better to the jets. I guess probably like a Wi-Fi type thing. Now Jensen knows all this. He's the one who does this stuff, so that's why he was trying to look for another world, you know, to take these people to, so they won't have to do stuff like that. Anyways, the Sliders contact Dr. Jensen, and they create a scenario where they pretend that Maggie, the other Maggie from that world, died in the experiment. So Colonel Burke's all like, you know, we'll give her a hero's funeral, and, you know, and keep up the good work. And so she leaves, and then they revive the Maggie, and then, you know, so now what's gonna happen is, since he does the autopsies, he's gonna help get Maggie like off that military base and get the implants out of her, so she can just live her life how she wants to on that world. And since now they think she's dead, and you know, and so that episode ends, and like I said before, like it was just like a touching romantic type thing, even though that romance was in this form of like hate, you know. But you know, emotion nevertheless is, you know, part of romance and love, and not everything has to be happy, you know. Some things just are sad. The next episode comes from season 2. It's one of my all-time favorite episodes. It's one of those ones that I recorded on VHS and just watched for years before I bought it on DVD. And that is As Time Goes By. And that's the one where Quinn is constantly sliding to new worlds, and the sliders are constantly meeting the same group of people over and over, and he meets his old high school sweetheart, Dalen. And these two, like him and Quinn, like her and Quinn, like they grew up as kids. They dated in high school, but then she moved away when they was in high school, and that just like broke his heart. So this episode starts off where it's I think it's Spain. They own America, and everybody speaks Spanish there. And there's a lot of immigrants coming in from Canada, and pretty much they get deported back. So everybody on this world is like they desperately trying to like find jobs, and they're like no jobs. And the sliders, they're desperately looking for a job, and that's when they meet Dylan McMillan. And so later, next thing you know, immigration comes in, and they all scatter and they get separated. Well, Quinn gets separated from the rest of the group, and the other sliders they get captured. So Quinn, he hops the fence, nearly is attacked by a dog, and he's saved by Dalen. And he hits his head so hard, so when she brings him into the house and he wakes up, he's just like madly in love with her, because he knows it's not his Dalen, but he doesn't care. He's just like in love because it's his old high school sweetheart. And he's constantly telling her how like when they was in high school and she moved away, it broke her heart. And she's like thinking this guy's like psycho because she doesn't remember none of this stuff, and because she never had time for school. And then he later convinces her that or explains to her what sliding is and how he wants to take her with him. And she's like, sure, she'll go, but what about like her fiance? And her fiance is Dylan McMillan. Now she doesn't care about her brother that's on this world. She just wants her fiance. And her brother on this world is played by Charlie O'Connell. Which I brought this up before, like Colin, like he's not Colin, but he just plays a different character, and it's so confusing. So anyway, our sliders are in court trying to plead their case, and they have a very incompetent lawyer. So she screws up, and they get deported to Canada. They're all pissed. Rembrandt is very pissed off. He doesn't want to go there. And he's all like, I'm over here getting deported from my own country. Oh, oh, I miss the humor in Rembrandt from the older seasons. Anyway, so as they're on the bus getting deported, it's night and then it's morning. And by that time, Quinn Dalen and Dalen's brother is able to break them out. But they are betrayed by Dalen's fiance because, in order to get a green card, he betrayed them. So Dalen's brother gets shot. She's upset. The vortex gets open, and Quinn's telling her, come on, come on. She's like, she can't leave her brother to die. I mean, she was gonna leave him before, so, but now she's upset because he's dying and stuff. So they all slide, and Quinn's like, he's really upset. He's down, he's sad, and the professor wants to know what's wrong with him. So Rembrandt goes to talk to him. And so they're talking about, past loves they had and how their hearts were broken. And Rembrandt convinces him, get a phone book and just like call her up, what do you have to lose? And yes, for all you young people, there's a thing such as a phone book, and everybody's name, address, and phone number was in that. So he finds the Dalen of that world, and she's kind of living like in the suburbs, and like her house is a complete mess, and she's crying, and Quinn like consoles her, and he tells her how like you broke his heart when he was in high school, and she's like, no, it was the other way around, because in that world her Quinn left in the 10th grade. And so then she ends up meeting, of course, Dylan McMillan. And in this world, he was a smart guy, but then he later decided to drop out of grad school and join a band. Well, his band doesn't really go the way he wants it to, and he becomes like an alcoholic. He does drugs, he cheats, he beats on Dalen in this world. But him and Dalen have a baby, and he doesn't want nothing to do with this baby. Quinn sees all this, and he's telling, Dylan that, you had the best woman in the entire world, and you're treating her like crap, and y'all have a kid, and you need to treat her better and stuff. And so him and Dylan get into like a fist fight where Quinn knocks him out in that one punch. So Dylan's all upset, he's embarrassed, and he's all like, "You want them so bad?" Because earlier, like Quinn told Dalen that, he wants to take her on all these adventures, but he didn't know she had a kid at that time. He tells her, where they're going is dangerous, and they can't put the baby life in danger. And also sliding's gonna be really dangerous for that baby, because they always tumbling on the ground. But he has an idea. He finds the Quinn of that world who's living in Seattle, and he tells him that he's a mutual friend, and and Dalen's still in love with him, so he gives her money to travel all the way over there. But she doesn't know that Quinn is a double, and she doesn't understand how she's talking to Quinn, but yet her Quinn's in Seattle. But he said he doesn't have time to explain it to her. So he meets back up with the Sliders, and he slides out of there. Now, this is the part that gets extremely confusing in this entire episode. When they slide to a new world, they end up in prison. It's just the three guys. Wade is nowhere to be found, and they're wearing different clothes. Now they're wearing prison outfits, and so we find out that on that world, those four are convicted felons who murdered a cop named Dalen Richards, which is, of course, Quinn's Dalen. And they don't understand what happened. Maybe it's their doubles that did it and not them. But it doesn't explain how they got in jail and their clothes changed. And so the timer's acting weird. It's counting up instead of down to 0. They don't know where Wade's at, but then they find their lawyer, and it's the same lawyer from the other first world they was on. And she's more competent this time. And she tells them, you all confessed to murder and all this other stuff. And so they go to court, and they finally meet up with Wade. And then Quinn looks at the clock, and he realizes the clock is kind of weird, like it's inverted or backwards or whatever. So then professors are like, "Oh, time's arrow," and Stephen Hawking's, and and time can move backwards. And it's that weird time travel episode, which makes no sense. It makes no sense of how their clothes changed, how they got into the prison, and all this other stuff. It's just, I get that the writers want to be ambitious and try new things, and they went bold and big, but it was just too confusing. And so they realize that they're moving backwards in a world that's forward. So everything that's happened in that world has already happened, but they're experiencing it now as they're going backwards in the world. So confusing. So Quinn tells them they have to confess to the murder, because in a few minutes the bailiff is gonna uncuff them. So they leave out of there. And if the world is technically already in the present forward and they're moving backwards, wouldn't people just be moving backwards? I mean, there's a CGI effect that changes stuff, but it doesn't make no sense. So anyway, Quinn has the idea that he's gonna stop the murder, and the professor tells him, don't do it because you'll be altering time. But Quinn doesn't listen, because then the cops show up. It's him and Rembrandt, and it's Wade and Professor. They all get separated. So Quinn and Rembrandt, they prevent Dalen from getting shot and murdered. Well, they prevent her from getting murdered. She still gets shot, but she's not murdered this time. And it turns out that her fiance of that world, or husband, I should say, her husband, or fiance, no, her fiance, is, of course, Dylan. So he's also a cop, and he threatens to arrest Quinn and Rembrandt. So that's how that all happened. It was never the doubles that did all that stuff. It was actually them. But it's I don't know how it was them, because they just got on that world. So it's one of those weird time travel episodes. So they meet back, even though he threatens to arrest them, he lets them walk off. They meet up with the professor and Wade, and professor is lecturing Quinn, because he tells him, look up in the sky, because now there's a hole in the sky, and there's another Earth that's all wiggly and stuff. and the moon like disappears, and the moon comes back, and then the hole closes up, and then next thing you know, there's like rumbling on that earth because the earth about to be destroyed because he's altered like time, and it's a cool concept, but if it's not perfectly executed, they should never tried it. But it's still a good episode nevertheless. So when I get on the other world, Rembrandt's all like, "Hey, are you gonna look up Dalen again?" And Quinn's just kind of like, "Forget about it." The next episode comes from season 3, and it's Prince of Slides. This is a pretty cool episode. It's one of my favorites. I like it. It's not like an all-time like it. Let's just say I'm glad I'm a man, and I'm glad I don't have to give birth. And I hope to God they never create an artificial womb from a man to have, because you know it's one of those things where it's kind of like, okay, women having babies, much respect. I would never do that. I don't. No, I would never do that. Like, I'm so glad I'm a guy. Like, I can't believe what all y'all have to go through when y'all are pregnant and then having to give birth. So much respect, because I had kidney stones one time, and that was very unpleasant. But my kidney stone was more like, it was really tiny, and when it came out, it didn't hurt. But the whole, like, I think I had it for like a week or two, and it was just like migrating through like my system. That hurt. That hurt. So yes, much respect to y'all. So this episode starts off with Wade writing in her journal that we get mentioned in season 2, where she sold the rights to become like a big star when she thought she was back on her world. This might be the first or second time we see her writing it. I think she wrote in it in the season finale of season 1 when they were on that lottery world. It's been a while since I saw that episode, but I think this might be the second time, because I remember hearing her narrate, I believe, in the season 1 finale. So anyways, she's writing in her journal, and Rembrandt's kind of being nosy, trying to see what she writes, and she doesn't want to show him because, it's very private. And it's her diary, not journal. Anyway, this world is ruled by England. And the professor, when he slid to that world, he slid in a bee colony. So he's getting treated for that. So next thing you know, a lady gets wheeled in, and she's screaming because she's pregnant and she's about to give birth. So it seems. And this woman is Danielle, and she is the Duchess of Hemingshire, because England rules America in this world. And this woman is no ordinary lady. Well, first off, she's played by Victoria Mahoney, and she quit acting to become a big time director. She's directed TV shows, some movies, some shorts. She was the second unit director on Star Wars, not the Last Jedi, but The Rise of Skywalker. I've never seen that, I don't think. I saw the last. Which one did I see? I saw the one where Luke came back, and and he dropped that green stuff, and he later died. So whatever movie that was, that's the one I saw. But she directed The Rise of Skywalker. So Rembrandt knows who this lady is because he knows her from his world, and and then she's all like screaming his name out, talking about she needs him, and then so he's telling the nurses and doctor, get me prepped and ready, and Wade and Quinn are kind of like, Rembrandt, how you know this lady? What's going on? He's all like, don't worry about it, guys. Something like this happened on their world, and it's just a simple blood transfusion. So he goes in with them. When Wade asked the nurse, how long is the blood transfusion gonna, take? They have to slide out of there. She tells them, it's not a blood transfusion. They're gonna transfer the baby into him. Whew. Now I know what you're trying to think. How can you take a baby out the womb and then put it back in another person? There's actually been a special on PBS where they explain how some people are born twice. I didn't watch the special, so I'm not really sure what they did. But they either take the baby out only a couple of months in, and then they put the baby someplace else and do something because the baby's like sick or something like that, and then they put the baby back in, or they put it in the circuit. So yeah. One thing I really love about this episode is the scenery. They have some beautiful locations in this episode, and it's really nice to see like new and exciting places other than the same old stuff. So Quinn, he disguises himself as like an orderly, and he tries to get in there to get Rembrandt out. But Rembrandt is so hyped up on like drugs that he can't really stay on his feet. So they get caught, and then the professor comes in, and he makes up this elaborate story about how they're the Duke's new like personal staff, like and so this woman named Lady Mary, she can vouch for them because she saw them talk to Rembrandt. And so Wade compliments her on her brooch that she has is very unique. And she said, "Oh, it's a family heirloom. It was given to me by like a former lover or something like that." When Rembrandt wakes up, he's very shocked to find out that he's pregnant. It, and once again, it's one of those comedic lines that Clavon gives. He's all like, "I'm pregnant. I'm not even married." uh, well, I miss his humor. And so, like, he's upset. He constantly has to pee. He just wants to be left alone with Danielle. And so they go and they try to find out, they try to find where Rembrandt's double is at because they have to transfer the baby into him. Because if they don't, they literally tell Rembrandt they're going to leave him there on that world. And this is before they had the Egyptian timer, before they went to Maggie's world. So they don't know how to get back to his world. And they was literally just going to leave the dude there because they didn't want to live there. Which that world isn't that bad, to tell you the truth. But still, it just lets you know how the third season was going and stuff. And this is again one of them kind of sad romantic type episodes because, okay, in this world, this Rembrandt, who is the Duke, he does not get along with Duchess Danielle at all, and I mean at all. They're constantly fighting. When she gets really mad, she throws stuff at him. Lady Mary created a rumor that Rembrandt was cheating on her or cheating on Danielle and stuff like that. And the reason for that because we find out very soon in this episode that Lady Mary is up to something. She caused the disappearance of the Duke because she wants her nephew to be the new king. I'll put a pin in that later. So, it turns out in a very touching story. Well, first, Rembrandt is singing to the baby in his womb. And this catches the attention of the Duchess because on this world, this Rembrandt cannot sing at all. He's very tone deaf. So she wants to know who this man is and why is her baby inside him. So he tells her that, he's from another world. And he tells her the story of his Danielle. Basically what happened is him and her dated, they was in love, and they had an argument. And she wanted to show Rembrandt what it would be like if she leaves and never comes back. So she hops in the car and she speeds away. She gets into a car crash. And she's in the hospital. That's when our Rembrandt has to give her that blood transfusion. And, he tells her, he cried night and day after she got better and he nursed her back to health, she left him anyways. And so he cried constantly, which is probably how he came up with that Tears song. And so, like, he tells her, like, even though she's not his Danielle, if he has to miss the slide, which he said he's gonna miss the slide no matter what, because he wants to stay with her, because he wants to make things right, and he wants to just, like, be her Rembrandt. And she rejects him in a very tearful way, talking about she just wants her Rembrandt back. And then she walks off, and then, and he just puts his head down. He's so heartbroken over this because not only did she reject him, but then she walked off from him. And it's just so touching because, we've heard about Rembrandt's love life in the past, and it just never works out for that dude. And it's just so sad. So with Quinn and Wade, they're like looking for the other Rembrandt duplicate. So they go to the place where he was last seen, which is kind of like this Camp David type place. I forgot what they call it in the show. And so, they're walking around, and then for some reason Quinn is holding a stick. And we find out later why, because on this world everybody fights with swords. So when our Rembrandt sees those two, he just starts attacking them, and then he gets subdued by Quinn. And so they explain to him on the way back that, they're from another world, there's another Rembrandt and all this other stuff. And they ask, why did he leave his wife, and she's pregnant. And so him and Wade kind of get into it a little bit, and he explains to her that, next thing you know, he was on a boat, he got hit in the head, people tried to like assassinate him, so he just left, and he didn't go back because him and Danielle constantly get into arguments and stuff. And so he tells her, haven't you ever fought with somebody you love? She's like, yeah, but then she ended up leaving, especially, and then she had a child, and she will never leave that person. So it should be pointed out that this duplicate of Rembrandt is played by his real-life twin brother, Clinton. Now, okay, this is the part that's really confusing. I don't believe Clinton plays the Duke Rembrandt for that much in this episode. I believe he only plays him from behind, or Rembrandt from behind, and then the only time those two are on camera really together is when they're running towards the end of the episode. Because here's the thing, Clinton and Clavon, they do look extremely alike, but one looks younger in the face and slimmer in the face. Also, Clinton hair is different than that of Clavon. Clavon has a jerry curl, and Clavon has just a typical kind of like a small matted type, like fro type thing, but it's really like matted and hard. And so it's kind of like you can tell when you see like their hair, because you could tell from that the King is Back episode that their hair is different and they look slightly different. Also, their voices are slightly different too. Clavon has more like a lighter voice, and no, Clavon has a deeper voice, and Clinton has a lighter voice. And so throughout this entire episode, this person, plus also I think not Clavon, but Clinton, he might not have a mustache at this point. I'm not sure. That's probably also why they didn't want to show him. But yeah, it's weird because like Clavon, I keep getting the names mixed up. Okay, Clinton. He's really only played another Rembrandt on screen twice, and that was in season 1 and season 2. And I remember in season 2, towards the end, he's pretending to be like our Rembrandt, and he slides out of there. I guess he wanted to slide because his brother keeps doing it a lot. But then that's really the only time he ever plays like his double, because in the 4th season, Clavon plays his double, and then also in the 5th season too. So I'm not sure why Clinton never returned after that. But yeah, I do believe that it's Clavon is playing both roles because their voices sound similar, their hair is very similar, and it looks more like him. And you really only see Clinton from like behind. So I'm not really sure why they decided to go that route. So back at the mansion, Rembrandt, our Rembrandt, is nearly assassinated when an assassin jumps on top of him and shoves a pillow in his face. And it's a very small little person with a female body. And you can probably guess who that is. It's Lady Mary. So the professor comes in to stop it, and she runs out. And you can't see her face because it's hidden. And then she goes to a secret passage where the other Sliders and the other Rembrandt was going to come in through. And then she kicks Quinn in the stomach. which he said if he was a little bit taller, she would have got him in the nuts. So because of this, they decided to move both Rembrandts and Duchess out of the castle and into that Camp David type place. Which, they're all shocked to see that there are two Rembrandts, and they later explain, what's going on. So the professor goes with them. Quinn and Wade, they're like in another room, trying to help Quinn because his stomach's hurting. So when they come back into the room, they see everybody's gone. So they're upset everybody left them and stuff. But then Quinn finds a brooch, and Wade's are like, "Oh, I've seen that before. That's Lady Mary's." So they figure it must be the assassin. Which Lady Mary could just went in there and dropped it by mistake. But yeah, for story purposes, they believe it's her. So they be like, okay, they need to find clues or evidence that shows that why she wants them murdered. And a brooch isn't going to be enough. So Quinn goes into her room and he's looking for some type of evidence. So then he finds a statue of the king, which is never explained how the king is related to the Duchess. Okay, the Duchess, she is biracial. Black and white, because the king is white. But here's the thing. I don't know too much about royal families and stuff that much. I know it's while in Lady Mary's study, princesses, they see a giant portrait of the king. So Quinn opens it up in the back and he finds love letters in there and rejection letters. As they're reading it, it turns out that years ago the king had an affair with Lady Mary and they had a son, and that son was George. George was believed to be Mary's nephew, but it turns out but she hid that because the dude can't take the throne and he'll probably be beheaded and stuff. So then they get caught by George, and Quinn is all like, "Oh, you're just here to cover everything up and all this other stuff." And George is kind of like, "What are you talking about?" And then he literally doesn't know either. So they give him the love letters, and so now they go to Camp David type place to find the rest of the group. So back at the Camp David place, both Rembrandts are going at each other, and he's trying to explain to him that he loves that woman so much, and that how can you leave her, and who cares if y'all argue, y'all need to work things out. Mary's all like, "You know what? I can't take this no more. It's time to get rid of them so that her son can be the rightful king," and all this other stuff, because her son is legitimate, because Mary is just just like a servant person. So they're gonna burn that entire place down because she has an assassin dude, a hitman. So they set the place on fire, and she gives them some type of sleeping pills in their tea. So they're all knocked out. But then they wake up and they smell the smoke. And so they run out of there, and then the professor puts the smoke out. So Mary's kind of like, "Screw it, I don't care if it looks like an accident no more. Just shoot them in the head." Actually, they don't have guns in this world, so just stab them, I guess. And so because Rembrandt has inhaled so much smoke, the baby's in distress, and the baby wants to come out now. So there's only one person who can deliver the baby. They choose the professor. Only because, he's like a scientist type dude. And he's explaining to them he's no doctor. He's just a scientist type person, a professor. So they're all like, Rembrandt's all like, "Please, man, save my baby." And so professor, he agrees. He cleans himself up. He lifts up Rembrandt's moo type outfit, and he's just like, "Lord." And growing up, I never really envisioned what it looks like down there to be a man giving them birth. But now that I'm older, I envisioned it, and it's just like, Lord have mercy. What the professor had to go through. So he delivers the baby off screen. He's now getting drunk. He telling the rest of the slides, he had to do it and stuff, because the rest of the slides, they show up with George, and they have a huge sword battle with the assassins, and Mary confesses she did it all for her son, and he's like, "I don't care, and you're gonna go to jail." And So, and the episode ends with, it starts to end with Rembrandt and Danielle. They start to reconcile, and he's going to try to be a better father and a better husband. And she gives Rembrandt like a picture of the baby, and they slide out of there. And you assume the episode is going to be over with, but then the most bizarre thing happens. We get to see them on another world. This is a nice callback to the first season when they used to do this. And it's a woman on a balcony with her daughter, and she throws her off. And so the sliders are mortified, but then they're in shock because the girl sprouts like angel wings and she flies off, and the mom's all like, it's the only way they learn. You just have to like throw them off. And the episode ends. It just ends on like a bizarre note, but it's a nice callback from the first season. Net Worth is an episode that comes from the fourth season, and it's a pretty touching episode. It's the second time the show's ever done like a Romeo and Juliet type episode. It starts off with the sliders getting separated. Something happening with the timer when they slid, somehow Quinn and Rembrandt slide inside a building, and Maggie and Colin slide outside the building, and they're separated by glass. And so they tell, Colin and Maggie that they're going to like try to find the door, and they'll meet them outside. So the episode starts off with a very bumpy slide where the vortex decides to split between the building. Quinn and Rembrandt goes inside the building while Maggie and Colin goes on the outside. They can't communicate with each other because the glass is so thick. So Quinn and Maggie start kind of bickering, kind of like an old married couple. And he tells her, they have 10 hours on the world, and he'll meet them outside. As Colin and Maggie are like bickering about the vortex and how one day, it's gonna like split them in two or rip an arm off or something like that, we see a guy by the name of Rick. He runs up to the building with flowers in his hand and some kind of like data card key. It's the same kind of card key that the Chromats use, so yeah, I guess their budget got kind of short. So next thing you know, he's trying to get inside when he's greeted by a gang, and the leader is named Jack. They're kind of like scavengers. See, on this world, there are three types of people. There are onliners and offliners, and the other group of offliners are kind of like scavengers. So technically there's really two, but there's kind of like three subclasses. And the onliners are rich people who live in these towers that have no doors, and they're able to order whatever they want from like any location in the world, and they get sent through these tubes that go to each tower. The offliners, they have it bad. They live in some of them live in the streets, some are homeless, some lives in the suburbs with tarps on their houses. It's completely run down. It's not clean, and the city doesn't want to do anything to help these people because they're poor. Once Jack finds out that Rick has a key that can get inside, I don't know exactly how they get inside because, like I said, there's no doors. Maybe the glass opens up or something like that when you put the key in. I don't know. Anyways, so next thing you know, they start attacking Rick, and then Maggie and Colin decide to rescue him. Quinn gets all pissy. He's all like, they only been there for 2 minutes and already they already got into a fight. So next thing you know, an alarm sets off and they take off running. Then as Maggie, Colin, and Rick are running through the streets, lasers start shooting from these really expensive buildings because they want to keep all offliners away from their building. So next thing you know, Rembrandt and Quinn, they're greeted by guards because they want to know if they're online or offline. And those two don't know what that means. They know it has something to do with the internet, but they're not really sure because that's the slang lingo they use in this world. Next thing you know, they're greeted by a 17-year-old girl named Joanne. She turns 18 in a week, and I'm bringing this up for a reason. So she comes in and she thinks Quinn is this guy online named Rick Montana that she's been having an online relationship with. She's never seen what he looks like, but she just assumes that he's, the guy. She doesn't assume Rembrandt's him, but she assumes Quinn is. So the guards back off. And like these people, like the online people, the rich people, they dress so futuristic. Like they dress like they look like people from our 70s that thought what the future is gonna look like. Like it's very bizarre. So next thing you know, she starts making out with him inside the elevator. That's why I brought up her age, because she's only 17 and Quinn's in his mid 20s. So that's gross. So with Maggie, Colin, and Rick, they're running through the streets, and he takes them to a junkyard, which is kind of like his hideout. And he opens up the sewer and he brings out a laptop that he built himself. See, in this world, offliners are not allowed to have laptops. They're not allowed to get on the internet. If they're seen with a laptop, they have their fingers smashed. So he tells them, the only way to communicate with the other sliders in the building is through the internet. So, but before that can happen, here comes the gang again. They take his laptop, they manhandle them, they hold Colin at bay, and Jack is all like, you know what, Rick, I like you. I'm going to own you now. And then he takes his laptop for himself and pays him for service rendered. However, right before the gang shows up, he was able to send a message to Joanne. And that's when things get a little dicey, because Joanne now realizes that Quinn is not Rick, and she is pissed off. She wants to call security. She cannot stand offliners because, their society just thinks of them as trash. So he begs, and so she finally lets up because she's very stubborn for like a 17-year-old. And so she allows them to communicate back with Rick and them. Now, in order to communicate and go online, they had like these little thing called a rig that hooks up to the internet, and they had like a little view screen, eyepiece, and like a little mic. And so like she's able to get to the internet that way. However, when she turns 18, she's gonna have some kind of like chip installed in her head that can hook directly up to the internet. Of course, Quinn doesn't have this, so he uses just a regular laptop, but they think laptops are lame. So once he realizes they're in trouble, he tries to locate Rick through his little internet server. And that's when Joanne realizes that Rick is offliner, and she is fuming again because, she can't believe that he would be an offliner and he would lie to her. Once Colin, Rick, and Maggie are able to fight their way off with the gang, they run through the junkyard and then they head to Rick's house. The gang gets stopped by all these security measures they place in the junkyard, like fire explosions and stuff like that, and tripwire, because they don't want the gang to get like near the suburbs. And like I said, it's like dingy houses. They have tarps. Their houses are falling down. It's really bad. So once they get inside Rick's house, they're greeted by a shotgun to the face, because Rick's mom, named Shirley, she's very protective because she's really scared of gangs. And Shirley hates technology. She hates the internet. She hates rich people. She hates people who has their faces like on a monitor 24/7. But then she realizes once Rick's laptop goes off that, he has technology. She tries to smash it with a hammer, but they won't let her. And they beg her and they plead with her, they need a laptop to get in contact with their friends. So she gives them her rifle, and they go to get Quinn and Rembrandt out that building. Next thing you know, Joanne wants Quinn to contact Rick and ask him if he's really an offliner. Rick wants to lie to her because, he's scared that she might hate him for the rest of his life. And, Maggie tells him, you can't lie to her. That's not what a relationship is built on. And he thinks to himself, well, he's been doing it before, so why can't he just do it again? But he finally decides, to tell her the truth. And as pissed off as she is, she still wants to meet him. in order to get out of the building, since they just pretty much go through like I guess like the laundry chute, like a tube system or something like that. And when they do, they fall directly in the dumpster bin. And Joanne is like horrified. She pulls actually Quinn pulls out a banana peel out her like shirt, and she's just like mortified, and she can't believe how like dirty and dingy the outside world is, and like she's very very paranoid and very very skittish. Like she really wants to go back inside because she really hates it on the outside. Rick's mom, Shirley, she hates rich people. She hates technology. She hates the internet. If she sees technology, she will destroy it. And so when she discovered that her son has a laptop, she is furious and she tries to destroy it. But they explain, they have to use it to get back to Quinn and Rembrandt. And then he explains, how he's in love with like Joanne, and his mom's like upset because he's kind of like, oh, she's one of them rich online people and we're offliners, and and he convinced, and then so they get into argument, but I forget what happened. She agrees to like hand Maggie her shotgun so they can get Quinn and the others back. So they go back to the hotel place to get the other sliders out, and in order for them to get out, they can't find a way out. Which I don't know why Joanne just can't use her little key thing for the holographic door thing. But anyway, they go through like the laundry chute and they end up in that dumpster bin. It's so gross. And like Joanne has like a banana peel down her shirt and Quinn pulls it out. She's like, ugh. And it's just like, I really like this actress. Like, she's just hilarious. And so they meet up with the group, and she meets Rick for the first time. And it's kind of like she's nervous, he's nervous. It's the whole Romeo and Juliet thing. They're giving each other like the shy little looks, and so the group decides, okay, y'all need some alone time. Let's go to the Chandler Hotel. So the whole Chandler Hotel is completely run down now, and the two kids like they're talking with each other, they're getting to know each other, and then as they have an argument because she doesn't like offliners and she wants her headpiece back, and her headpiece connects her to like the internet, and he doesn't want her to have it. He destroys it, and she's like really upset. And he's trying to tell her, whether you're offline or online, we're all the same, and you can't be addicted to this thing. And she's upset, and she just wants to go back to her hotel because she hates it in the real world. So, but before they can go back, the gang finds them with the bazooka, and they destroy the roof, and the rubble completely submerges everybody. And so they grab Joanne and they take her back to the hotel because they want to use her to get like all the resources they can, because they're not allowed to have it because they're offliners and stuff. So after everybody comes to, they rescue her, and then she heads back to Rick's mom's house with the others. And Rick's mom is, Shirley and Joanne is starting to like bond a little bit, and and Shirley's starting to like turn a new side, and she's starting to like Joanne and see that like onliners aren't all really that bad, and Joanne is starting to see that offliners aren't really that bad, and it's kind of like it's a nice little Romeo and Juliet type story. Now let's unpin something that I said in the last entry. The second to last episode is Obsession. And this is the first Romeo and Juliet type episode that the Sliders had. This is a Wade-centric episode, so this is kind of cool. We get to see like a Wade episode, which, poor Professor, he doesn't get like not a single love episode in the entire series. Like, not a single one. Like, the only thing that comes close is like, when he's heartbroken over seeing his wife that is dead on his world and she's alive on this other world. Poor dude. So this episode starts off with Wade having a dream where she's in kind of like this Victorian type era where, there are horses and the swords and stuff like that. And so she plays this woman. I forget her name, but in her dream, she's in love with this guy with long hair, and their love is forbidden because his dad will not allow it. And then right before I think they kiss or something like that, she wakes up from the dream. So after the alarm wakes her up, it's time for the slide. And they're in a world where India rules America. And the professor cannot wait to leave this world. He cannot stand it. And I think this is one of those episodes that came right after, which professor is it? Just his demeanor. Well, actually, to tell you the truth, it's hard to tell because like both professors are so grumpy. They don't really like much of anything. So they slide out of there. And when they slide to the new world, they're greeted by a man on a motorcycle. When he takes his helmet off, actually, I don't think I think he takes his helmet off, and then Wade's like, "Oh my God, it's the guy from my dream." And so he introduces himself as Derek Bond, and he tells Wade that he's been waiting for her his entire life. Quinn is kind of like, "Excuse me." This is one of those will they, won't they between Wade and Quinn, where it's kind of like he wants her, he likes her, but he doesn't want to get with her because he likes sliding and meeting all these new women, but he doesn't want her to have like nobody else. So Derek tells him how he's a psychic, how that dream that Wade is having is actually real because it happened for them in the past life and they got reincarnated, and that he's been waiting for her his entire life. And like she's like nothing. He always thinks about her and nothing else, because a long time ago the Prime Oracle, who told him that this woman is like your true love and she will change the events of your life and and help you be a better person and stuff like that. So he's totally like obsessed with her, and he tells her we should have like lunch or dinner one day, and this is where I'm staying at and all this other stuff. So as they're walking, trying to get into town, Professor is trying to explain that, this guy probably knows Wade double or something like that. And Quinn's kind of like irritated. And Wade is kind of like, she's like the hopeless romantic type. So she's loving this. And plus, Quinn is kind of like, oh, she's just loving this way too much because she believes in all this reincarnated and spiritual and psychic stuff. And at that time, Rembrandt is almost ran over and he hurts his ankle. Turns out it's the Prime Oracle that ran him over. And the Prime Oracle is Isaac Haynes. Isaac Haynes is best known for playing Shaft and also playing Chef on South Park. So when they take Rembrandt to the hospital, they start to find out what kind of world this is by seeing a magazine and also a billboard that says that the people of that earth are mining on the moon, which that just makes no sense. But anyway, the magazine pretty much states that Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy Jr. are still alive, that they were never assassinated, and the reason for that is because of these psychics. So it turns out that they're on a world where about 10% of the population has psychic abilities. They can see into the future, they can see inside people's bodies, they can see pretty much events that's going to happen before they happen. So these people work in medical, politics, police, stuff like that. And the Prime Oracle is like really, really, really high up. It's kind of like this. The president, he's a big important type person, but the Pope for most people is also the second most important person when it comes to things, even though the vice president should be. So how like Catholic people are. They love their president, but they love the Pope even more. That's kind of like how the Prime Oracle is. Because apparently what happened was Abraham Lincoln wasn't assassinated, and because this psychic person prevented his death. And after that, he made a special cabinet for these psychic people. And, and they've been able to like avoid major wars, asteroids hitting the earth, like all kind of stuff, So Rembrandt is like flirting with his nurse, and she's able to see like, how his ankles hurt without him taking off his shoe or sock, all by just touching his foot and like using her psychic abilities. And Wade is just like eating this up because she's like loving it and stuff. So later on that day, they go to like a dress type shop to get Wade a dress to go out for her little dinner date. And of course, Quinn's like really annoyed and irritated by this. And when she's like all like dolled up, she's all like, she hasn't worn a dress since the lottery. And, she asks Quinn, how does she look? And he's like, you look all right. And so this kind of like pisses her off more than want to like this Derek guy. And when Wade and Derek have like their dinner date, everything goes nice. He's wooing her, and she's telling him, she's not gonna be in town much longer because he knows that they're gonna slide, and he's all like, you're really special to me, and all this other stuff, and and it's kind of like he tries to persuade her to like stay with him. He wanted his successor, so he had Derek and this lady, propose why they should be the new Prime Oracle. Apparently, with this woman, he wanted his successor, discipline. So he had Derek and this lady skill that Derek has. And Derek proposed like why they should be the new Prime Oracle. But he's apparently so cocky and arrogant. She doesn't have patience and stuff. But she doesn't have the level of skill that Derek has. And Derek is like an extremely good seer. Derek can learn. He's so cocky to balance out his life and have patience. He doesn't have patience and stuff. But it would take that woman too long to be a better psychic and learn the way Derek has. So Derek can learn to be the new Prime, balance out his life and have patience news and stuff like that. But it would take that woman too long to be a better psychic and learn the way Derek has. So he picks Derek to be the new Prime Oracle, and it gets announced over the news and stuff like that. So the guys are filling Rembrandt in on what's going on with Wade and her date and all this other stuff, because when she comes back with an engagement ring. And so Quinn is being like, kind of like a little bratty kid. All like, this is dumb, this is stupid. Tell him to like take his ring and shove it. And she's all like, this guy is great. He can give me everything I want. I'm like totally like falling in love with him. And Quinn pretty much gives her like the ultimatum, think about like trying to get back home to your family and all this other stuff. And he says something that like pisses her off or something like that. And the professor's kind of like, the professor and Rembrandt, they try to talk to Quinn. They try to tell him, if you try to make this decision for Wade and if you don't like accept her wishes, you're gonna lose her more than you know. And you're just gonna like push her more into this man's arms and stuff. And that's really what happens. He keeps pushing Wade more and more because of his jealousy, and she's falling more and more in love with this guy. And Rembrandt is trying to convince Quinn that, he doesn't want to see Wade leave either, but this man can literally give Wade everything she wants, and it's a good possibility she'll never get home, which we all know in the 4th season she doesn't, and in the 5th she dies. So then when Wade goes there to give the ring back, he's still trying to convince her, to stay with him and all this other stuff. So then he shows her something he prepared for her. And when he takes her to her room, because he prepared a room for her to spend the night, it's her old childhood room, like in every last detail, wallpaper, curtains, bed, stuffed animals, toys, stuff like that. And she's all like, how did you know? Like, this is like what my childhood bedroom looked like. And then she comes to the revelation that he went inside her mind, and without her permission, that he read her mind and just tried to woo her, like, and it's kind of like he's not trying to like get her to love him. Well, he is trying to get her to love him, but it's kind of like he's not doing it in a very genuine kind of way. And she's very pissed off by this. She said it's like a violation, like a sexual assault type thing, but to me it's more like a violation. Now, what happened to Diana Troy and Star Trek Next Generation and Nemesis, yeah, that's a violation right there. A mental one. So then we start to see just why this guy isn't necessarily such a good guy. He pretty much tells her, I spent my whole life waiting for you and you're not going to leave. And, and and stuff like that. So he's pretty much forcing her to stay there against her will. So now she's worried. She calls up the Sliders. They come to rescue her. They manage to break her out, only for them to get caught and for her to get recaptured again, like within a couple of seconds. So at this point, Rembrandt's nurse is trying to help them get like a lawyer and try to like get Wade out of there, but they're not able to do that because they don't have like a $10,000 retainer. Oh, I completely forgot about something. Early on in this episode, Rembrandt and the professor are arrested. Why? Because the police oracles decided that they saw a vision where they are gonna murder Wade. And so Rembrandt and the professor are like, we'll never do this because we're her friends and like stuff like that. But they say, all you have to do is sign this paper, you get released from prison, and then do not murder her. And if you do, they'll be on them and stuff. So they come up with this elaborate scheme, the professor and Rembrandt. They are going to trick everybody into thinking Wade is dead. So that's the only way, that Derek guy will leave them alone. Because once it's time to slide, he can't follow them. So Rembrandt's nurse, she writes a prescription for Wade. And it's these sleeping pills. But these sleeping pills does more than that. It really messes you up to where you're like, it simulates kind of like death type stuff. And so they give the prescription to Wade, and there's a note inside. So she reads it, she takes it, and she calls Quinn, and she's like, Quinn, I'm dying, and everything. And he's like, what? Oh my God. She's like, it's the only way that he'll leave me alone. I have to kill myself. And so she drifts off and goes to sleep. He's worried. He rushes to the mansion and gets her out. And then they put her in the back of a medical van. And so next thing you know, they drive off, and then he's all like, hey, this is not the way to the hotel. Or not the hotel, but the hospital. And then they discover that, he discovered it's a ruse because the professor and Rembrandt shows up. And they're all like, she's not really dead. But his nurse lady has to revive Wade, unless she probably will sleep. And so the new Prime Oracle dude, he is upset because he thinks Wade is really dead. And so the president is in town, supposed to declare him the new Prime Oracle. But then, as soon as Wade wakes up, he senses that. So he drives out to her location, and Quinn thinks that Derek is going to try to stop them. But he said, no, I'm not going to stop y'all. I'm going to let her go. And the reason for that is because he now sees what the Prime Oracle told him. Like, the Prime Oracle pretty much set events into motion by running over Rembrandt and having them get involved and all this other stuff, because it taught Derek a very good lesson in how to be patient, how to not obsess over stuff, and how to allow people to live their way out without you trying to control them and stuff. So they slide out of there, and as soon as they slide out of there, Derek is horrified because he sees the world they're about to slide into. And I've always been confused by this, because the next episode after that is that Goodfellas episode. And it's mob type stuff and it's bad, but it's not that bad. And so I never understood why he thought that world was so bad. Well, it turns out that episode aired out of order. And the episode after that was supposed to be Invasion. And as we all know, Invasion was where the Cro-Mags show up. The last episode is probably by far the best romantic Sliders episode, and probably the best Rembrandt episode next to The King is Back. It really shows off the acting ability of Clivon. And it is some of the best you will ever see. It's one of the most touching things you will ever see. This episode starts off with the Sliders inside a plane, and they're trying to fight they're trying to escape this war that they got in the midst of. So they have to slide out of there, but they're several thousand feet up in the air. So they jump out of the plane, they open up the sliding tunnel, and then they go inside. Now, come on, what are the chances they're gonna fall right into the vortex? Because they're skydiving in the air. And what like the odds, you know? Plus, not to mention, Quinn and Rembrandt are now injured because something on the plane blew up, and Quinn's face is completely mangled, and he's unconscious, and Rembrandt's kind of knocked out too. So when they slide out there on the new world, they're on the ground, and Quinn's badly hurt, and so is Rembrandt. And Maggie tells Colin, "Go into town, go get help, because she can't drag them and stuff." And he's worried. He's all like, "I'm still new to this. It's like a weird kind of world?" And she's all like, "All worlds are weird. You just have to like go with the flow and just navigate your way through it." So he runs off and he tries to find help, and he finds a guy, and the guy has kind of like an old stagecoach buggy things and a horse. So Colin thinks this is his old world, but it's not. This dude pulls a gun on him. He's all and so they go into town, and then Colin gets a doctor and he gets help. And the doctor, and this is Dr. Grace Vanderbilt, and she's played by Valerie Pettiford, and she's a very big time actress. Like, this woman has been in a lot of stuff. One of her current things now is a show called The Discovery of Witches. I haven't watched that yet, but I plan on watching it. So they get everybody back to the hospital, and Rembrandt starts to wake up. And when he wakes up, he sees his doctor, and it's like love at first sight for this man. Like, he's like really, really like into her. And it's some of like the grossest flirting I've ever seen. He's flirting it up with this woman. And I just hate seeing that smirk on his face, talking about his man parts and all this other stuff. It's just like, oh. But yeah, they're talking, and next thing you know, the others come in the room, and Maggie tells Rembrandt, she kind of like sneakily tells him what's going on. She tells him that he's fine, but Quinn is not, and they have to find him a doctor, and they can't find one within 3 days. They might have to leave him there, and slide on out of there and stuff. So they start to try to figure out what kind of world this is. Pretty much on this world, America seceded from, well, not America, but California seceded from America. So everybody's part of the militia now. That's why everybody's armed. They're also the reason why everybody is armed, because that world was attacked by the Cro-Mags. The Cro-Mags stripped that world pretty much bare. And people there are paranoid because, the Cro-Mags can change their appearance to look like anybody they want. So everybody's on like high alert. And everybody on that world hates the Cro-Mags. So then this guy named Ralph, he overhears the conversation, and he starts to talk to Maggie. And, he tells her, "Oh, I can get you a really good doctor for your friend and all this other stuff if you have like dinner with me or lunch with me and stuff like that." In this episode, I really give it up to Maggie, because she's really taking the reins as a leader in this episode, because Quinn is unconscious, Rembrandt's too busy playing around with his doctor, and Colin is just Colin. And so, and she's telling, Rembrandt, whatever you do, don't say, this is before she found out about the Cro-Mags. She tells him, like, don't say too much about where we're from and all this other stuff, because, she's not sure how people might take this and stuff. Well, of course, he doesn't listen to her later on in the episode. But anyways, so, he's with his nurse lady, a doctor lady, and they're like really kicking it off, and we slowly see them start to like, fall in love with each other and date each other, and it's just some of the most touching things ever. Like, we really see Rembrandt like really happy, and in a way we haven't seen him this happy since like probably the third season with Danielle from that Prince of Slides episode. But this is a woman he's never met before, so this is like brand new type love, like other than old love that like broke his heart. And so they're constantly talking, holding hands, and then like he sings to her, and it was so it was just so good to hear him sing again. Like we haven't heard this man sing since the third season, and when he sang, he really didn't sing. It was most like he was singing for that Christmas episode, and he sung for the Prince of Slide episode. But after that, he really and he sung a little bit in that Dragon episode. But other than that, he hasn't done that since really like the first like season or so. So it was just so good to hear him sing because he's a Tony award winning guy. Like he actually won that award from like the Dreamgirls original like play. And so like it was just so good just like to hear that again. And then he accidentally tells her about the whole sliding thing. And he tells her like he's never met a woman like her before, and if Quinn isn't like better, he wants to stay there, but not just for Quinn, but he wants to stay there because of her. And so when she hears about the whole chromat thing, she's kind of like, or not chromat, when she hears about the whole sliding thing, he's all like, oh yeah, that's right, because chromats have sliding technology. So she starts asking him what kind of worlds they've been on, and is it dangerous? Like she's asking him like a lot about like sliding. And he tells her, some of the worlds he's been on. It's a nice callback to season 3. Um, as they're walking alongside the beach at night, and it's just so romantic. Meanwhile, Colin is trying to find out everything he can from this world by going to the library, and he finds out that when the Chromats attacked, many of the humans betrayed the other humans, and they started working for Chromats like Margaret Thatcher and stuff. And another person who betrayed the human race was Dr. Venable, Rembrandt's doctor. And so it's like, ah, crap, you know? So when Maggie's on her lunch date, we find out that, like, a lot of people living in America have decided, like, to join together. So Mexicans and, like, Chinese people have joined together and they created this restaurant. It's like a fusion place of Mexican and Chinese food. That's kind of why Maggie was wearing that Asian-inspired, like, outfit. And so that when she's with Ralph, he's like telling her like all this stuff, like what he does and for a living, and it's a complete lie. He's actually one of those people that he's a British like Secret Service agent, and he's looking for Thatchers. Thatchers from Margaret Thatcher are people like who gave aid to the Cro-Mags and betrayed human. So like it's later revealed when she's in the room with him alone that he has a gun, all these passports, and a secret identity. And that's when he tells her, who he is. And it's not her and he was taking pictures of. It was the doctor lady. She just happened to be in the pictures. So she tells him where the doctor lady and Rembrandt are. And she tells him, like, don't you hurt Rembrandt. He's like, oh, I promise not to hurt him. So next thing you know, it's in the morning. They're at the beach. And they're having breakfast, Rembrandt and his doctor lady, and the Secret Service people come in, and Rembrandt's trying to stop them, and they actually hurt the dude. Like they went back on their word, and they knocked him out with a gun. So then back at the hotel, we see Maggie. She's really, really, really distraught because she knows when Rembrandt finds out what she did, he's gonna be pissed because Rembrandt is falling head over heels for this woman. So he comes in. Oh no, wait, she's talking to Colin, and Colin's all like, she betrayed the humans and she gets what she gets, and they should take her away. And Maggie's all like, how can you be like that? And he's all like, well, in my world, we know right from wrong and we punish people and stuff. So Rembrandt comes in with tons of guns because apparently in this world you can get guns like really easy. And so he's loading up, and as he talking to them, Maggie's all like, it was me that ratted you out and ratted your girlfriend out. He is mad. I mean, he is pissed off mad. And it's like one of the rare times we actually see him and Maggie go at it, because the only time we ever saw that happen in the past was when Maggie was possessed by that symbiote. And that's pretty much it. And so it's kind of like she's crying in tears. She's trying to tell, well, she's upset, and she's trying to tell him, like, she had no choice. What this woman did was wrong. She helped the Cro-Mags. Rembrandt hates the Cro-Mags because they tortured and imprisoned him when he went back to his Earth for several months, and they went inside his brain and brainwashed him. And then, like, he reveals to Maggie that he told Grace all about sliding because she kept asking him. But then the thing is, Dr. Grace, she knows how to do the Chromag like mind meld thing where you can heal people. And that's how she's gonna heal Quinn. And so Rembrandt tells Maggie that they have to bust her out because she has to save Quinn. So as like the Secret Service agents and the doctor lady, they about to board the plane to be deported. Colin and the other sliders, they show up with guns and like a buggy and stuff like that, and the horses. And there's a big standoff, but everybody puts the gun down. They talk it out, and Rembrandt says, can y'all just hold off on the deportation until she heals Quinn? And she's kind of like, oh, whatever, screw Quinn. Like, just take me on to England and prosecute me. And then Rembrandt talks to her, and he's like, look, now you said you would do this thing, and you're a doctor. And you're supposed to want to heal people, not hurt people. And if you don't heal Quinn, you'll be going back on, like, everything you believe in. So then they all go to the hospital. She heals Quinn. He's better. He's getting dressed. As he gives Rembrandt and the doctor lady some time to talk, to say goodbye. And then she tells him, like, Secret Service dude with you. Like, he's all like, he'll put in a good word for her that she healed him. Take me with you. I don't want to get prosecuted. Maybe they'll go lean on her, stuff like that. And he kind of like, he looks at her and he tells her, like, just tell me the truth. Why did you do what you did? Like, please tell him that, the Cro-Mags brainwashed you. Like, tell him that, they tortured her family and that's why she had to help them. And she just couldn't. She just looked down and cried because she knows that she willingly helped these monstrous people out because she herself just didn't want to get hurt. And they embrace, they cry, or she cries, and then she gets taken away. Then Quinn comes back in the room and like he's all like, "Oh hey, what all did I miss?" And his brother's all like, "I'll tell you on the other world." It's kind of like a really sad story and everything. And then the episode just ends with Maggie like calling out the Rembrandt and just running to his arms, and she's like busting into tears because like she knows that he will never get over this and that she has broken his heart probably like for life now because she's never experienced all them past like lovers that he had like the other sliders did in the other seasons. And it's like and she's just so heartbroken because like she cares about Rembrandt a lot as a friend, and she doesn't want to lose him or have him like never trust her again. And it just ends on a very like touching note, and it's just like one of those things. Like I just think that's the best Valentine's Day episode ever on Sliders. So yeah, that's my list and everything. And anyway, I'll talk to you later. Bye.